Hi everybody, I hope that you're all doing really well. So today I am back to do my wrap up of everything that I read in the second half of January. And funnily enough, I don't actually have much to show you in the way of physical books because I've been making a lot of use, of course, of audiobooks as I usually do. But also I've discovered a remarkable invention. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called ebooks. Yeah, I completely forgot that my library, as well as having a free audiobook app, also has ebooks that you can download and just read from your phone. I'd kind of been lamenting the fact that I've not been able to go to my local library and being able to like take out books that I'm not quite sure if I'll like and then like read a bit, and if I don't like it I can just send it back. You know, I don't have to spend money that way on books that I end up hating. And then I realised, you know, ebooks are right there. I can just download those to my phone, and if I like them then I'll pick it up, I'll actually buy it for myself, and if I don't like it then no harm no foul. And I feel really silly that I've never thought to do that before. And it helps me whilst I'm a poor, unfortunate, unemployed person to save a little bit of money for now. Though actually everything that I have read this month I do want to eventually buy. So who knows, maybe I'm not really saving my money, I'm just delaying purchases. But anyway, as you've probably come to expect, I have in fact made some more progress on Les Mis. I've actually been a little bit slower this past week with Les Mis because I've been wanting to try and prioritise doing other reading other than Les Mis, which didn't really happen, but you know. So I am just one chapter shy of finishing the second part, which is part 2 Cosette, which also means that I am a little bit behind on getting my reading vlogs out for this week. I'm a very bad co-host, naughty me. But yeah, I put it down not because I wasn't enjoying it, like I love this book with every fibre of my being, but I felt like I wasn't reading anything else, so I put this book down wanting to pick up other stuff and ended up doing other things. I ended up filming, I had an interview on Friday, so I was like prepping for that. So yeah, life just got in the way a little bit of actually reading. But I am really thoroughly enjoying this. I'd probably say out of all of the sections so far, this has had the most digressions that the Discord group have found to be a little bit of a slog. There's the infamous Waterloo section, which I actually ended up really enjoying. But then we got to the convent section. There are 2 books in this where Victor Hugo goes on very lengthy digressions about this one particular convent and the history surrounding it. And I can kind of understand why it's there, but it's not that fun to read. Whenever Victor Hugo is focusing on the plot, it is absolutely fantastic and really gripping, and then there are moments where he goes into digressions which are a little hit and miss. Some of them I love and some of them I'm like, why are you there? But I think that's also part of the charm of this book. I am really enjoying reading this again, and it's just so fun to be able to have the Discord alongside and seeing how everybody else is getting on. I'm really enjoying it, so thank you to everybody who's involved so far. Next up, a book that I mentioned I was partway through. I have finally finished The White Ship by Charles Spencer. This is a non-fiction history book which is all focused around the infamous sinking of the White Ship. This occurred in 1120, the ship that was carrying the only legitimate son of Henry I of England, meant to be going from Barfleur to England. However, unfortunately, in all the excitement of being able to transport the heir of England back to England, people got a little bit rowdy, a little bit drunk, and ended up ramming the ship into rocks, and only one person ended up surviving. And this one incident led to disastrous consequences and plunged the realm into anarchy. Literally, it was called the Anarchy. Because Henry I's only legitimate son had been killed in this disaster, it meant that there was a bit of a succession crisis. Eventually, Henry I extracted a promise from his nobles that they would support the claim of his eldest and only legitimate daughter Matilda. Yes, that is Empress Matilda, my fave. However, as I've mentioned and ranted about many times before, this didn't end up happening. Matilda did not end up being queen. Because after Henry I died, a guy called Stephen decided to claim the throne for himself, and everybody was like, yeah, we always wanted Stephen, we never wanted Matilda, we were lying then. And it's like, so yeah, this book basically covers this disaster of the White Ship and covers the history just before then. It's starting from 1066 with the Norman Conquest and carries through to the end of the Anarchy period. And it was really good, really enjoyable medieval history. I really liked being back into this time period that I'd started to get more into last year. While the White Ship is the focal point of the whole narrative, it is not explicitly about the White Ship itself, but rather the history and the conflicts and the people that are surrounding it. I definitely recommend it as a piece of medieval history to read. However, as I mentioned in my previous wrap up, I feel like I don't love this quite as much as I did Matilda Empress Queen Warrior, because it is focused much more on an event rather than on a person, and I much prefer like character focused narratives, whether that is fiction or non-fiction. I felt like because Charles Spencer had so much, you know, surrounding contextual history that he could talk about around the White Ship, you know, he could always like talk about something over here and something over here. There was so much that he could talk about that it's kind of hard to keep that streamlined. I think he did a good job, but I feel like it for me always works better when you have to link things back to one person rather than to an event. Matilda, Empress Queen Roria always had to link back to Matilda, so you couldn't stray too far outside of that confine, which kept the narrative, so to speak, more focused for me. And you know, I just generally am somebody who prefers to read about people rather than events. Because this is more of an event-focused narrative than a character-focused narrative, you're not really getting the chance to like really dig into these people, which is what I personally prefer with my history. But it was really, really great. I do highly recommend it, and I will definitely be picking up a copy when it comes into paperback. Next up, I finished Cromford by Elizabeth Gaskell, which along with The White Ship is another one of my 2021 TBR books that I wanted to get to, so check me out. This is a narrative all focused around this little town called Cromford, which is a very female-dominated town, and basically all the goings on. It's a book that is very much about manners and appearance, particularly what we conceal for the sake of appearances. The majority of the women in this town like to keep up this air of respectability and class, even though the truth is that a lot of them are struggling. They always want to look as if they're doing a lot better than they are. They see it as vulgar to talk about money and to talk about struggle. But as we get further on in the story, we see how having that attitude really takes its toll. Cromford was originally released in, I think it was 8 installments in the magazine Household Works, and the parts I found most enjoyable about Cromford were these slightly more meta moments where Elizabeth Gaskell would somehow find a way to be a little bit self-referential. Early on in the book, one of the women talks about how she thinks it's vulgar for books to be released serially rather than as a whole novel. In the same section, 2 characters argue over whether Samuel Johnson or an author called Boz is a better author. Boz, which was the name given to the author for the Pickwick Papers, which we now know was Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens was actually the editor of Cromford when it came out serially. So I thought that was really fun. I quite like the idea of Charles Dickens reading over Cromford and editing it and then finding like this little reference to himself and being like, There's some really funny moments in this, particularly one scene to do with peas, which I won't reveal for you, but if you've read it, it is really, really funny to me. I did feel at times like this book was getting a little bit slow, like it didn't have too much focus in the way of plot. However, what really brought it back up for me was the ending, which I'm not going to spoil for you, but I feel like the way these characters all came together at the end was just really lovely to read. So definitely not an Elizabeth Gaskell that I love quite as much as North and South or Wives and Daughters, but yeah, definitely did enjoy reading this. And then the second Elizabeth Gaskell that I read was Cousin Phyllis, and unfortunately this one didn't do it so much for me. It's still Elizabeth Gaskell's like great writing, and she does come up with some really interesting themes. A lot of her themes to do with like the changing Victorian landscape, relations between men and women, which when you mull it over after reading it are really interesting, but like I don't know, I just found like the actual reading experience to be a little bit dull, and I didn't really care so much for the characters as I had done in Cromford or Wives and Daughters or North and South. This book was another one that was published serially, and it was actually unfinished as far as I know. There were meant to be 6 parts, but she only ended up publishing 4 before she died, and I feel like you can definitely feel the lack of ending with this book. It definitely feels quite abrupt, which I feel like is just like a very common thing with Elizabeth Gaskell's books for me, is I always feel like the endings are like, I want more. So yeah, that's my ultimate review. Is it still Elizabeth Gaskell? I still, you know, if you are a completionist, definitely read it, but it's not my favourite. And then finally we have A Poem for Every Winter Day, edited by Ali Asiri. Now you might be thinking, Charlotte, doesn't that book end in February? And the answer is yes, it does, but I made an executive decision. I basically decided that these like poems for every day, where you're just reading 1 or 2 poems a day and then you having to remember to pick up the book the next day, it doesn't work for me. I would frequently forget to read this for like 2 weeks at a time and then be like racing through the 2 weeks worth of poems. I wasn't reading this every day, and you know, that's how it's intended to be read. So I made an executive decision that I was just gonna like blast through the last month of poems that I would have to read. So I have actually finished this, but I haven't done it in the proper order. And I'm probably not gonna be picking up the spring one or the summer one, even though they are so pretty. It is a shame, and like it's not a bad judgment on this book at all. I feel like if you are somebody who is disciplined enough to actually remember to pick this up every day, then you'll really enjoy it. It's definitely been fun to read some more Christmassy poems, and it is a reminder that I do like reading poetry, and I probably should make more time for it, but I'm probably better off reading like one poet's collection than I am to read like an anthology like this, where it's like read a bit every day. And shall we have another moment for this cover? So yes, that is everything that I finished in January. I'm a little bit annoyed with myself because I got about 100 pages into The Switch by Beth O'Leary in the space of about like 2 or 3 hours, and that was a couple of days ago, and I thought at some point before the end of the month I was going to be able to like finish the end of this so that I'd have it ready to show you in a video. However, that has not ended up happening, and it is the 31st today. I might be able to finish this today, but it's unlikely. So yes, this is the second novel by Beth O'Leary. January. This follows the grandmother-granddaughter pairing of Eileen and Lena, and both of them are not having the best time of it. They're both feeling unsatisfied for whatever reason in their lives. So after a big event, which means that Lena is out of work for a couple of months, they basically decide to switch lives. Lena moves up to her grandmother's home in Yorkshire, whilst Eileen moves down to her granddaughter's flat in London. And I think somehow, somewhere, we're going to get a little bit of a romance plot here, which is going to be great. And I felt like this was like quite a nice palette cleanser from Les Mis. You know, a little bit more like cutesy fun than Les Mis. And I'm really, really enjoying it so far. I might even be enjoying this more than I did the Flatshare. So stay tuned, I will keep you posted on how I do with this. I'm also a third of the way through the audiobook of The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V. Schwab, and I'm really, really enjoying this so far. I picked this up particularly after hearing glowing reviews from Jennifer Brooks and also Anna from Read to Me at Midnight. It's all about a girl who was originally born in the 18th century called Adeline LaRue, who after she is forced into a marriage that she doesn't want, prays to the gods to help her. And unfortunately she times it wrong, because the god that answers are the ones that she's been warned not to pray to, the gods that answer after the dark. He grants her her wish to have more time and to not be accountable to anybody, but with a terrible price attached. While she will live forever, or at least until she chooses to die, anyone she meets will quickly forget her. And we're basically following her in the 300 years that have passed since. And yeah, this is such a me book. I love this. I'm having a great time with it, and I've realised that there are quite a few books that kind of link into this one that I've read previously that take on this similar kind of pact with the devil, or like pact with God, or a character that for whatever reason is able to travel through time. And yeah, I want more books like this. I really enjoy it. But like I say, I'm only a third of the way through. I will let you know later on next month how I got on. But that was everything for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Do let me know if you've read any of these books, what you thought about them, and also let me know about any books that you finished in January as well. I'd love to hear from you. I hope you're having a fantastic, fantastic day, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks. Bye.